And we are online. Hey, everybody, it's me, Mark, with ServerPress. Welcome to our first podcast. This is going to be quite an experience for all of us as we're getting through some technical issues, as expected, of course. And today we're going to cover some things with Desktop Server and maybe a couple things with SiteSync, and then throw it out to you guys if you're in the chat room for some questions. So feel free to join us in the chat and ask your questions here. Try to keep them basic because we don't want to spend 3 hours on any like edge cases. We can take those offline and deal with those later. And with that, I will turn it over to Greg.
Hi, my name's Greg Franklin, and I've worked with ServerPress. I'm heavily in the support area. If you've ever asked questions about Desktop Server, you've probably talked to me. And I also am one of the organizers for the Inland Empire Riverside area meetup. And that's it. That's me.
Okay. Hey, so if you're going to be in the chat, I'm going to be sending out probably a tweet real shortly. But if you're in the chat, there are a couple of guidelines that we'd like you to follow. Please be civil and respectful. We are all human beings behind the keyboards and behind the camera. If someone asks a question and you know the answer, feel free to answer it. Don't wait for us to answer it if you know the answer. Be helpful. Just like everything in WordPress, this is about community. So feel free to join in the community and become a part of it. This is the fun part. Greg and I reserve the right to boot someone from chat if the rules aren't followed. So let's get right on into it. First of all, we got some ServerPress news. We have a release candidate for WPSiteSync 1.4, which is available on the WPSiteSync.com website. You can download it there. It's absolutely free. We hope to be releasing the new version next week. Also, we released a newsletter, a long-awaited newsletter, a couple weeks ago, and feel free to check that out. We'll be putting that in the show notes, and I'll be popping the link into the chat in just a minute. It covers things like the roadmap to version 3.9.1, which is our most recent release, which took us a while to get there, and it's quite a long blog post, but hopefully worth the read. It was definitely worth writing. Also, we have a usage survey that's been going out to our customers, and we would love it if you would fill it out. I will be providing a link for that also in the show notes. And then I just wanted to also bring up that wanted to re-congratulate Nathan Tyler and Natalie McLeese for winning the Plugin Palooza at WordCamp Orange County. Their plugin is pretty awesome, so you'll want to check that out, and there's links to it from the newsletter. And with that, we're going to be demoing some stuff today. Today, we're going to cover just kind of the overview of what design time plugins are. They're kind of a really cool, unique thing that is specific to Desktop Server that allows you to do very specific things with all of your sites within your local development, and they stay local. And Greg is going to be doing a demo today, and he's going to show you kind of the structure of it, and then go from there and show you how to install your own design time plugin. So, Greg, how are things looking at your end?
Having a little bit of trouble, but I'll possibly be in place in just a moment.
Okay.
The one thing Mark mentioned that's really cool about these is just like WordPress, these plugins extend what Desktop Server can do for you. And another thing that we talk about a lot is speeding up your workflow, and that's something that these plugins do. Each one has a different way to kind of help speed things up.
And so we may be running into our first little bit of a technical difficulty. um, are you, Greg will be sharing his screen shortly, but he was having some operating system issues right before the broadcast, so hopefully he's getting them worked out. Did we lose you, Greg?
Over the last,
I think we lost Greg.
you
So
did.
this is the beauty of live demo. Oh, are you back, Greg? I thought I heard him for a second. Okay.
So can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry. I can hear you, but you seem to be frozen on the screen.
Geez. Ahead and if you were desktop server, if you could go ahead and show off some of those
Yeah.
plugins, because mine is
Yeah.
not.
Okay. Hang on just a second. I'm going to start a screen share here. Give me just one moment. All right. Can you see my screen? Hello?
I guess one of the things we can talk about is that the limited version of desktop server, which is the free version that you can download from our site, comes with 4 to 5 plugins right off the bat. The first one is the admin color bar, and then there's the airplane mode, debug and trace, and local SSL. And if you're on Windows, there's one called Windows Compatibility Fix.
Hey, Greg.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to try again. I tried to share the screen and I seem to have gotten lost as well. So I'm going to try one more time here really quick. Give me just one moment. Honestly, we tested all this in pre-production and everything worked fine. But, you know, this is the way it goes sometimes. Give me just one moment. I'm swapping screens around a little bit, so hopefully that'll screen two. Okay,
I can see your screen. Yes.
You can see my screen. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm actually on my secondary screen here. It seems like when I minimized the Hangout window, it actually locked everything up, which was strange. Okay, so with Desktop Server Limited, and I am on a Windows machine. Greg is on a Mac machine. These are your developer plugins, or what we call design time plugins. And the reason we call them design time plugins is because they are plugins that remain local on your system. They will work with every local website that you create, WordPress website, with just enabling them here. But when you're ready to go to production, when you're ready to go live, these plugins do not go up live with the website. So they stay local on your system. And with Desktop Server Limited, which is the free version, it automatically comes with the admin color bar, the airplane mode, and debug and trace, local SSL, and the Windows compatibility fix, which is, of course, Windows specific. And the Windows compatibility fix actually addresses some long path name issues that you find in things like Easy Digital Downloads as an example. And when you're working locally on Windows, Windows actually has a limit. I believe it's 256 characters. Is that right, Greg?
I believe so, that the path can't be any longer
the
than
path.
that.
Yeah, and so when your path is 256 characters or longer, and that sounds like a lot, but you'd be surprised, it causes Windows to hiccup. So the compatibility fix addresses some of those issues. Mac and Unix systems have a ridiculous path character limit. I can't remember what that is off the top of my head, But this is where Google is your friend. And so I usually like to enable the local SSL, admin color bar, and the Windows compatibility fix. The debug and trace is a very nice plugin for when you're doing debugging, when you're, say, you're installing or testing plugins and themes. It'll give you information if there are any issues. But since today I'm just going to be kind of covering this little bit here, I'm not going to enable the debug and trace options.
And I also want to mention with debug and trace, if it is on, it exposes all PHP errors. So you'll see this box that has this orange bar across the top, and it'll have an error in there. And that error can even be things like notices or deprecations. So if you should be creating a new site in Desktop Server and then have debug and trace on, and that you've added a new theme or you've added a new plugin, and suddenly you're getting these big orange these boxes with big orange titles and all this kind of thing, it's probably because debug and trace is turned on. Just simply go back to stop and restart services, uncheck the box like Mark has it, and continue from there. That large error should go away.
The other thing that I am trying to figure out here is I don't believe that, and I apologize for this once again, I don't believe that I shared a link to the chat. I see that we have about 80 people watching, but I don't see anyone in the chat. So I'm kind of assuming that there's a separate link for the chat, which I thought that I found. And so I do apologize for that part. I am still, I thought I had figured everything out with this, but like I said, this is all brand new to me. Actually running a podcast, I was commenting to Greg earlier about how I like being a guest on a podcast, but being a host brings a whole nother level of responsibility. So give me just 1 minute here. Oh, here we go. Oh, the people are in chat, but it's in the back end of YouTube. Okay, so never mind. I'm just looking on the wrong screen. So I'm writing something right now, and then I will get back to this. And next week, we will be even more, we will run it even a little bit more smoothly. So you guys can, of course, poke fun at us and at me all you want over the next week. I've got pretty thick skin. So we've now started up our desktop server, and you can see that I've got a completely fresh install of Desktop Server Limited. You can tell that because the remove, copy, or move an existing website is grayed out. There's nothing to remove, copy, or move. So we will start, and we'll call this podcast 1.0.dev.cc. So I'm going to start out by creating a new WordPress site and give that just a minute. And in the meantime,
While that's going on, let's show them where the plugins.
Oh, sure.
That will give them an opportunity to see
Yeah.
where they're located, and if they decide to add, which Mark will actually be adding a plugin today called Mailbox Viewer, and he'll show you how that's going to go. And this is so there's on a Mac, it's going to be in your Applications XAMPP XAMPP DS plugins folder. On a Windows machine, Mark can tell you where that is.
Yeah. So in the chat, I've put where, and it's applications, I'm sorry, /XAMPP/DS
DS plugins.
Plugins. And that's on the Mac. And then on a Windows machine, it's at C:\XAMPP DS plugins. And as you'll see here, if I go to my C drive, here's my example-lite directory, and here's my DS plugins directory. And here are all of the plugins. So when you go to install a new plugin, all you have to do is install it, copy the directory here, and then restart Desktop Server, and that plugin will show up at the very beginning, as I'll be showing you with the Mailbox Viewer shortly. Can I make the screen bigger? Jeff says. Let's see here. I am on a pretty high res secondary screen here. Let's see here.
Maybe in the screen properties or settings.
Yeah, I'm working on it. Unfortunately, then you lose all the resolution, but let's see if I can, if this will work. Is that better?
There you go.
Is that better? Good.
Jeff, what do you think?
Does that look better?
It looks great.
I get the feeling I'm going to be learning more from the people in chat today than they're going to be learning from us. But that's what community is all about, right?
Yep.
All right. And all these people say, yes, much better, and boom. All right. All right. So that's good. My first success of the day. So here we have the site, and I will bring it over. Here's our WordPress installation. And oh my goodness, it's huge now. On my side, it's huge. We're going to install this in English. And we're going to call this our first podcast. Because I am not going to remember this, I am going to confirm the use of a weak password. Okay. Can I make the screen smaller? Thanks a lot, Scott. Remember the part where I said I reserve the right to boot people? All right. Let's see. I'm just kidding too. I'm not going to boot you this time. All right. All right, there we go.
So I guess the first thing we can talk about is you'll notice that the bar, the admin bar at the very top, is blue instead of the usual dark gray, which is from the admin color bar. And over to the right, it says development website. And Mark's going to show you that you can actually change this. Underneath the settings tab is an admin color bar setting, and you can change that to anything that you want.
You can make it any color you want. So I happen to be partial to the color green. And since this is my website, I'm going to make it green. And I'm also a fan of the Green Bay Packers. So let's just make it really ugly.
And to tell you the story on why this even came about, why the admin color bar was created, was because we found that lots of users like to have several tabs open in their browser.
And did we just lose Greg, or did you just all lose me? We're going to turn this into a football argument. Look, the Packers rule, let's just get past that. End of story. Okay. So we lost Greg, but Greg is actually the one who developed this this plugin. Are you back, Greg?
I thought I was. Am I in?
Oh, you were talking about how we lost you there for a minute,
okay.
and you were talking about how you what gave you the idea for this, and then we lost you.
Okay, let me try again. You can hear me now, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the idea came from the fact that lots of people will have sometimes have two tabs open, one with the live site dashboard and one with the local site dashboard open. And there's been times where they've accidentally made a change to the live site when they didn't intend to. And by allowing the people to change their admin color bar to any color that they want, it's very easy to tell which screen you're on, which if you're local or live.
Right. So I can tell you, and we've had more people comment to us that this has been a lifesaver for them. And originally, when with version 1.0 of this, you had to go into the WP config file and make changes in order to change the color and everything. And then Greg and Dave Jesh, one of our developers, worked together and made it so you could actually do all the configuration from within the WordPress backend. But what's really nice is, as you saw, I did not, if I go to my plugins here, as you normally would in a WordPress site, these are not plugins that are installed here. These are plugins that Desktop Server controls, and so, like I said, they never go live when you're ready to go live. One of the really cool plugins that's available that comes standard with the Desktop Server Premium is the bypass login plugin, which we've had so many people say is, the best thing since sliced bread, and I don't disagree. And what that allows you to do is bypass the login, exactly like it says. So when you go to the login screen at the beginning, you can have that complex password, but you don't have to remember it, because you just select which user you want to be, whether it's an administrator or a user that you might have, and you select that user, and it logs in as that person. And that only works locally. So when you ship it live, you don't have to remember to take out the bypass login plugin or anything like that. It just goes, and it's a standard WordPress site with standard login. So we all are big fans of bypass login, and I don't remember who developed that one. I think Steve did.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the minute he developed it, I think I fell in love with it almost as much as I fell in love with Desktop Server the first time that I used it. So it's a okay. And okay, so Priscilla asks, hi Priscilla, how are you?
Hi, Priscilla.
Um, Greg says hi. The plugins are installed, and generally, if they are plugins that are free plugins, they will be on GitHub, and I will provide a link on GitHub. We have a ServerPress repository, and we have some free stuff there. And I'll be showing you that shortly when I show you how to do the Mailbox Viewer. We love you too, Priscilla. And Priscilla's awesome, by the way. If you haven't met her, she has been one of our biggest fans since I can't even remember how long. I think she was one of the first people I ever met in the WordPress community too, down in WordCamp San Diego. So that was pretty awesome. And so that's that. Now the other
Next
plugin
plugin. Mm-hmm.
is this airplane mode. So WordPress and a lot of the plugins that you install with WordPress, they like to phone home a lot. And that requires an internet connection. Well, the whole idea of working locally, of course, is that you don't necessarily need an internet connection. And when WordPress is trying to contact something on the internet and there is no internet connection, it will slow down your local development to a crawl, because it's sending out all these requests and not getting any replies. So Andrew Norcross developed a plugin called Airplane Mode. And this is a plugin that works from within the WordPress environment, or it works as a desktop server plugin. So this is one of those kind of unusual cases where, well, not necessarily unusual. A lot of plugins can actually go into desktop server plugins, but this is one of those where we liked it so much because people would say, oh, my local development is running really slow. And we'd say, well, try airplane mode. And so we added it as a DS plugin. And when you set it up, it shows you how many requests are being made. And when you click on this, now I'm in airplane mode, it's enabled. And if I start poking around, like for instance, if I go to say add a new plugin, um, right now it says browse plugins because I'm in airplane mode. I have no internet connection on this WordPress site. And that DS plugin folder once again, it'll apply to all WordPress sites. So if I need to go back out on the internet and I have a good internet connection, I can re-enable it. And then all of a sudden, look at this, all of the WordPress repo plugins show up. So, and Adverb Media Production asks if this video will be on YouTube to watch again. The answer is a qualified yes. I want to make sure if there is nothing offensive or anything that needs to be edited out. If there is stuff that needs to be edited out, it will show up eventually, but there will be a little bit of a delay. So absolutely, the whole intent is to have this available for people essentially forever.
So a couple comments
Go
from
ahead.
me on this is that you had mentioned about it shows the communication out, and you'll notice right now that there's a number 4 next to the airplane, and that's how many calls it made out just for him to when he activated the page, when it became back to the point where he could communicate with WordPress.org. So the benefit of this again is the fact that it will speed up your dashboard. It's going to make your dashboard faster. And the times that, as far as it not being in use, is with the times like right now, if you go to try to add a new plugin and airplane mode is on, you would not see this list of plugins. And the same is true with the themes.
That is true. Yeah. So, so that's kind of an overview of the plugins. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Greg?
Well, I would think we'd want to talk about local SSL and debug and trace.
Okay. I'll have you guide me through what you would like to demo on this. This
Sure.
was supposed to be Greg's segment, but for some reason his screen sharing isn't working. So,
yeah.
So you guys are getting a healthy dose of me. You're so lucky. You're welcome. Anyway.
So local SSL now adds the ability to have SSL. If you activate the local SSL plugin, it creates a fictitious certificate in your local SSL directory. So if you were to look there, it'll have a serverpress.crt and a key to make your sites appear to be at HTTPS and support HTTPS. So that site that Mark made, if he were to go back, you'll see that there's a green lock up there in the corner. If you click on that link to view the certificate, you'll see that it says, if you go to certificate valid, and right there you'll see it says serverpress.localhost and all those kinds of things. And this was this plugin came to us in a collaboration. Josh Knapp from An Honest Host wrote this for us.
Right.
And it's been terrific. It's been a great way for people to test and see if their HTTPS site is got a green lock, as it were.
And by the way, Josh is at right now, so all of you people in the chat, pat him on the back because he stepped up to the plate on this and killed it. So.
He also wrote the ngrok plugin, which is a premium plugin that's in the premium version of Desktop Server. And I should mention that ngrok allows you to share your local site out past your firewall to a client or a designer or a developer, or if you're trying to get some troubleshooting help, now someone can actually see your local site and not have to actually put it up onto a host or something like that. So that's our local SSL. Debug and trace, I think we mentioned in the beginning that debug and trace is going to expose any PHP errors. The trace part of it is a little utility that you can run independently, and it's for coders that want to see what their variables are returning, things like that. You can learn more about that up at our docs.serverpress.com. And I guess the last piece, which also you mentioned, Mark, was Windows compatibility fix. That is only on the Windows version, and it has to do with the paths.
Right. Now, there's some people are saying that when you talk that the demo goes away. So I think if you, those of you watching, if you click on actually my screen and physically click on that in the bottom right corner there, it will not go to Greg when he talks. If you guys could let me know if that works, then that would be great. And if that doesn't work, then I will look to see if there's something in the control panel to make it work. This is, like I said, a learning experience for all of us. And by the way, yes, someone brought up the ngrok, which is another premium feature. And ngrok is another plugin that Josh wrote, and that allows you to share websites over the internet. So it's not just local, which is pretty great for collaboration. So I'm going to have to pause here for a second, just long enough to see if I can figure out a way so that you guys can all see my demo all the time. There's got to be a way to do it, I would think. So I apologize. But these are all things that I had, like, this fantasy in my head that everything was going to work perfectly the first time, and clearly I was wrong. So let's see here. I can turn off his video. Oh, goodbye, Greg. So I am not sure if I can do that right now. I will have to look into this later because I don't want to take up a lot of time. But what we will do then is I will stop demoing when Greg is talking. And then when Greg is done talking, I will go back to the demo. So I won't do anything that is critical while Greg is talking. And hopefully by next week, I will have figured out that little bug. So and it's not really a bug, it's a feature, but it's a feature that I don't really know how to configure right now, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. So what was there something else you wanted to cover, Greg, or wanted
No,
me
I
to
think
cover?
that's it. I think at this point you
Okay.
can show them how to do Mailbox Viewer.
Okay.
Mailbox Viewer is free, and you can install it if you are running the Desktop Server Limited version. You can show them how to download it and install it. The premium version comes with it already included in the package.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the things we should mention
Right.
about the Mailbox Viewer is it has several advantages. When you're working locally, there's no mail server. And so if you wanted to see, for example, if you lost your password and you went to the link to retrieve or create a new password, basically, that mail gets sent out, but it doesn't go anywhere. With the Mailbox Viewer, Mark's going to show you that that actually shows up in the Mailbox Viewer. But not only that, it works with all kinds of plugins like contact forms and EDD and WooCommerce. Anything that sends out mail, you're going to be able to see it in the Mailbox Viewer.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop all the web and database services, and I'm going to actually download the Mailbox Viewer plugin, and I'm going to close Desktop Server. You don't really have to close Desktop Server in order to do this, but we're going to start from fresh here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to github.com, and I think, if I recall, if you just do a Mailbox Viewer, you can see it right there. Here we go. And you can just go right in here, and then there's 13 releases here, and just download the latest release. So so I'm going to go ahead and download it. And then hopefully there's nothing in my downloads directory that you guys shouldn't see. That was a joke. Not really. And so then it's a zip file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the files, and I'm just going to go ahead and extract them to my C drive, examplite, and my DS plugins directory, and click OK, and then OK. And now if I go to my C drive, hopefully it created the directory structure OK here. I should have a Mailbox Viewer 1.0.14. So now if I open up Desktop Server again, Give me just one moment. And you can see I've got Mailbox Viewer here now as an option, along with, of course, the version number. So I go ahead and I activate it, and I click Next. And it's going to start the web and database services. And now I now have a desktop. If I go to my Sites button right here, it's going to open up a new web page. And as you can see from the localhost sites page, you can either visit your website, you can go to your dashboard, or you can go to your PHP My Admin from right here. But if I want to go to the Mailbox Viewer, which I just added, here we go. Up here, there's a tools drop down, and you click on Mailbox Viewer. Uh-oh. What happened?
You need to rename your mailbox, that folder. You left the version number on it.
Okay.
So just
I'm sorry.
go back to that and just change that version number. Get rid of the version number at the end of it in your file explorer.
Oh, in my file. Oh, okay.
See how it's got the dash 101.
This is why Greg handles support, because he knows everything. That's what I needed to do, right?
That's what you need to do.
Okay. So I call Greg for support all the time. I have more Help Scout tickets with Greg than any of our customers. All right. So let's try this again. So rewind about 5 minutes, go to Sites, and then if I go to Tools, and
you'll have to restart.
I need to restart my services. I knew that. All right. By the way, I'm getting older. So let's see. Restarting should do the trick. Yes, Rachel, Greg does rule. There's no doubt about it. For those of you who may not know this, Greg and I have known each other since 1987. So we met working at Circuit City back in the late 80s, and for some reason he's decided to stick with me all this time, which is amazing. So let's see.
Refresh your page.
Yeah. I might have to actually
yeah, you might have to literally stop. The whole thing.
Sometimes the restart will do the trick, and sometimes it doesn't. Yep, Circuit City. We worked in the video department and sold VCRs and televisions.
What are those?
Big
What are
screens.
VCRs?
I know, right? Yeah. Remember Hi-Fi VCRs?
Oh yeah, Betamax.
Oh, well, I never sold Betamax because it had been kind of obsolete by the time I was selling video. I think you had a couple more years under your belt with selling video than I did.
Click on close. Nope, you got to close.
You think I need to? Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. 8-track tapes, that's right. Yeah, Zingy did work there too. So Steve Zinga and I worked there, and Greg, not at the same Circuit City, but we figured out that approximately at the same time we were working at Circuit City, which is funny. All right, you're right, Greg. Dagnabbit. All right, I apologize for this. I normally always have Mailbox Viewer running. It does actually come installed standard with Desktop Server Premium. But we decided that it would be kind of a cool thing to give away as well, because it would be really useful in everybody's workflow. Okay, so close it down. I did. Live and learn. All right. Hey, Steve. Greg actually did used to work at Federated before he went to Circuit City.
It's true. Shadow Stevens.
Those were the days. Fred Rated. Remember
Yes.
him?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Let's see what we got here. It's still not showing up, Greg.
Uh,
Did I mess up on my directory structure? That's the only other thing I can think of. No, it's there.
uh, I don't know if people want to see this, but we could go look at the preferences file and make sure that it's loaded in there.
Oh, that's a good point. Sure. Let's go look at the preferences file. Now, the preferences file, for those of you who may not know, the preferences file is what tells Desktop Server where everything is, your websites, the names of your sites that you've created, and also which plugins are
Activated.
It's not really a file that you want to play with too much, but
It's in your program's data.
yeah, I know. I was having a hard time finding it earlier because it is a hidden file on Windows systems, and I believe it's a hidden file on Mac systems
It
too.
is. It is.
And so you have to show hidden files, and then this is I will show you here. So this is your
Let's take a look.
preferences file,
Let's look
and
at the end of that mailbox viewer. Ah, see the path as
there
well.
it is. Yeah,
Mhm.
this is what Greg is.
Did you stop and
I
start
did
the
not.
service?
I did
Okay,
not.
so that
And
won't
the other thing
maintain.
is, right. So that's the other thing is that if you are editing your preferences file, you have to make sure that everything is stopped and the desktop server is closed, because desktop server retains the information from the preferences file when it loads up. And so even if I were to edit that file right now with the services stopped, the minute that I started, it would rewrite the file to what desktop server has in its memory. Um, and so
You're going to stop
yeah,
it and then close
and then
it, and
close
then you
it,
can edit it.
and then I can edit it. And I'll bring this over here. And that was a good catch, Greg. Did I mention that Greg is the most awesome support person?
Oh, too far.
What am I doing? Hold on.
There
Get
we go.
away with the
Perfect.
delete key. I know. All right, let's try this again. All right. This time it's going to work. I have a feeling. I have a good feeling about this. See, aren't you all glad that you came to watch us like bumble and things like that? I mean, this is awesome. This will make the highlight reel at the Christmas party. And you're welcome. Is Williams your last name or your first name? Uh, and then Bonnell. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. You're welcome. And we thank you for being a long time customer. My kids thank you too. All right, let's try this. Hey, look at that. And there we go. So you know how when you create a new WordPress website, it sends out an email when you create the username, and here we go. This is the email right here. So it's a web interface that allows you to see the emails, and that makes it a lot easier, because a lot of times, well, in the past, if you wanted to test out the mail functionality of a WordPress site, you had to install a plugin on each site, and you actually still needed to set it up with a mail server and all these things. And my experience with it was always that it was iffy at best. I would run into problems. And so this is a lot easier. You can test the mail functionality, especially with your forms plugins, whether you're using, Gravity Forms or Caldera Forms or something like that. if you're setting up a WooCommerce site, you want to make sure that that functionality works with sending out the proper information. And this Mailbox Viewer will help you with a lot of that. So it's fantastic.
Mark, go ahead and do a password reset on your current site, and just so they can see a password
Okay.
document
Okay.
come into the mail.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to do it this way. I'm going
Yeah,
to log out, and then
lost
I
your
am going
password.
to lost my password, and I'm just going to say Mark and get new password. Boom. So now if I go to my site here, my mailbox viewer, here we go. And password reset right here. And it shows you this is a mistake. And so it's your typical password reset email. So
Does anybody have any questions on the mailbox viewer?
and so far people are thanking us for the mailbox viewer. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
uh, And so that is kind of an overview of our plugins. I apologize for the little technical difficulties, but that's the overview of how our design time plugins work, and we are constantly working on making more. So if you have ideas or if you want to contribute, we do love it when people, like I said, Josh has helped us develop some design time plugins, and it's all about making everybody's workflow a lot easier. And sometimes there are things that we get kind of wrapped up in our own little dev world, and we don't realize sometimes the things that might be useful to you. So if you have ideas, please feel free to shoot us an email and say, hey, it would be really cool if Desktop Server could do this, and we'll see what we can do. Or if you're a great programmer and want to get involved there, you can do that as well. And you can email us at support@serverpress.com. And with that, I think we're ready to open it up to some questions, unless there was anything else that you wanted to cover, Greg.
No, that was great. I
Okay.
hope everybody gets a chance to try out all these plugins. And I guess the only thing else I would want to mention that you might want to open up in a tab is the documentation. You can go to docs.serverpress.com and click on the plugins link,
Sure.
and you will see all of our plugins.
And
Up
where
at the
is
top, up at the top, if you click on plugins.
Oh, there we go.
There they are.
So here are all of our plugins, and they don't all have, we actually have videos for almost all of these on YouTube. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, there's videos for almost every single one of these plugins. Our most recent plugin that we created was a database archive tool, which actually will back up your database and your preferences file, and you can set it to do that automatically. And it's a design time plugin, so it works on all your WordPress sites as well. Which is a pretty cool thing. Dave Jesh, a little bit behind the scenes of what's going on, or what happened is Dave Jesh kind of secretly worked on this without even telling us about it until he was pretty much ready to release it, which kind of blew our minds. So, of course, we were really excited when we saw that. But that's Dave. He's always he's something, Dave. So. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else. We want to keep the questions basic, like I said. We don't want to get into a lot of like technical detail. If there's any like edge cases or anything like that, we're going to have to take it offline to support a ticket that's trackable, so that we don't keep everybody occupied on trying to solve just one problem, unless it's something that we feel can solve a lot of people's problem. Feel free to ask us anything you want regarding Desktop Server or WP SiteSync. You can ask us literally anything. You can even ask us sort of some personal questions, and we might even answer them. And the Q&A will last about 30 minutes or so. We're not really strict on the end time. We just want it to be useful to people, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. So I'm gonna have to scroll back here and see if there's anything that I missed. So Sapience, I hope I pronounced that right, wants to know if ServerPress will work with Thesis. And these are good questions for Greg. Greg, do you
Yes,
know? It will. Okay, absolutely.
absolutely. Works just
Okay.
fine with it. Will work with any theme. It doesn't matter. Where desktop server is pretty much the environment. So it's basically, it's your web server, your database server, it's the PHP interpreter, and then all the design plugins. So any theme is going to work and any plugin is going to work. Now, whether these themes and plugins have been written to work, as far as if there's any bugs or things like that, if you have debug and trace on, it may expose those. And there's also sometimes there can be an issue if the plugin or theme have not been written to work with PHP 7. There sometimes can be some errors shown there, or you might need to update that plugin or theme to work with PHP 7.
Okay. KFC Skin Piles asks what the danger is of migrating from a server that's PHP 7 and then you move to a lower version of PHP and all in one.
So
So basically you're going from a higher version of PHP to an older version of PHP.
the only thing that would be of concern is if you had a plugin or a theme that was specifically written to work with PHP 7, and if those functions, the new functions that are in PHP 7 were not in PHP older versions, those functions would not work. And that would be the case. I think you're going to see many hosts, switching to PHP 7, even the older ones. You can go into the cPanel a lot of times and upgrade from the older version to the PHP 7. It's to their advantage. Not only is it great for us, the end users, because of the speed, but it's beneficial for the host to be running PHP 7 also. They can, as you know, with shared hosting, they're trying to fit as many people as they can onto a single computer. And PHP 7, by the nature of its faster processing, allows them to add more. So it's beneficial for them to run PHP 7.
Okay. Hopefully that answered your question. Steve Cunningham asks, since you're XAMPP powered, should we ignore updates to XAMPP? We all know the answer to that, Greg. You and I, when I say we all. The answer is yes, please ignore any updates to XAMPP. We've actually, while it is based on XAMPP, we've actually had to make some tweaks and changes to it in order to make it work with Desktop Server. And so any attempts to update or anything like that could actually break the functionality of Desktop Server. Was there anything you wanted to add to that, Greg?
No, that is correct.
Yeah.
It is a customized XAMPP.
Right. Highly
Structure.
customized.
Yeah, highly
Yeah.
customized.
Yeah. So the list of design time plugins, as I showed you here, if you look on the screen share, you see docs.serverpress.com. And if you go there and there's a tab at the top that says plugins, where I'm pointing right now, and you can see all of the plugins, the current design time plugins that we have. I think we have, what do we have, 12 or 13 now, right, total? And some of them are very specific to Desktop Server Premium. Because one of the reasons that they're specific to it is a lot of them might use our version of WP CLI. We've created our own CLI design time plugin, which is DS CLI. It's 100% inclusive of WP CLI, but it also has some other CLI functionality that is going to be integrated with future versions of Desktop Server. And so some of these design time plugins will not work with the limited version just because they require that CLI functionality. Let's see. Judith. Hi, Judith. You can go to old sites but can't open dashboard, just admin and home. I'm not sure what
Can she visit localhost? Does she see the screen with a list of sites?
Okay, so open up your desktop server and then try to go to the local host and see if that opens up, Judith. And Douglas, once again, the design time plugin links. Most of them, if you go to our github.com and look for ServerPress, you can see the ones that are publicly available, and then some of them are in private repos that are designated specifically for
premium version.
For the premium version. With that said, whenever we release a new premium version, we will send out an announcement, and sometimes we'll make it available to you. Like we did with the database utility, it's available to you in your account section on ServerPress. And then, of course, the next release of Desktop Server, anytime we come out with a new release, it will be included within within the installer of that Desktop Server version. So in between, the whole point of the desktop of the design time plugins is for us to be able to add more functionality to Desktop Server without having to always do core updates. Because since this is a fairly complex product, having to do core updates requires a lot of changes to code sometimes, and that can take some time. So this is a pathway for us to bring more functionality and better functionality to Desktop Server without having to, re-crack the code of the whole system and add to the core or change the core. Okay, let's see. So hopefully that answered your question, Douglas. Glenn says, just a newbie, are there any WP SiteSync features in Desktop Server, or is this a completely different product? Go ahead and answer that, Greg.
It is a completely different product. It's complementary to Desktop Server in the sense that WP SiteSync allows you to push posts and pages from one server to another, whether that be local to, like with Desktop Server, to a live site, or even from a staging site to a live site, or a live site to a live site. It doesn't matter how it pushes. It's just between a source and a target. It is a complementary plugin, but it's not something that you have to have Desktop Server.
Okay, and then Sapience asks if it's possible to test upgrading a site's PHP version, needing to upgrade the messed up site from 5.4 to 7.0.
It is not at this time. It's something that the team is talking about, having a switch to go from one version to another of PHP, but currently we do not. I can tell you that I've helped several clients. They'll import the site into Desktop Server in 7. And then what we'll do is we'll go into WP CLI and do update plugins and update core. And that will usually update all the plugins in the core and the theme, and then everything will generally work. But it's a good way to test. It's one method that I've helped people do.
Okay, and Michael asks if it's possible to see a dev to production workflow push.
Not sure I understand the question.
I think he's looking for some sort of maybe a flow chart or something like that shows kind of what the workflow is from going from development to production.
There is a great article up on 9seeds that walks you through how they use Desktop Server and how they do their workflow. So if you do local development 9seeds in Google, it should take you to their article.
Right, and in general, once again, a premium feature is that it does have a direct deploy and a quick deploy capability for going from development to production, which is very easy, kind of one-click methods. It works with hosts that have like a cPanel backend. And then, of course, with premium memberships, if you get stuck with trying to go to production, we do offer assisted deployments. That's included with your membership to Desktop Server Premium. So even if you get in a pinch where it's not going like it's supposed to, we're there to help you do it, and we'll do the deployment for you and even tell you how we did it. because some servers have their own proprietary configurations. And so sometimes we actually, and we've done thousands of deployments, but sometimes we have to go into these servers and say, oh, they're doing it this way, and we have to figure it out. So, we just know what to look for because we've done so many. But Michael, there are plenty of documentation docs out there, and it's a good idea. I should write up a document on how to do that and what the workflow looks like. And I'm always looking for material to write, so that's a really great idea. So maybe I will do that in the next couple of weeks. Barbara asks if there are caching plugins or Jetpack, or if there should be, and the answer is a totally absolute. You do not want caching plugins, and you do not want Jetpack. That is correct.
With Jetpack, you can.
However, yeah. Go
With
ahead.
Jetpack, you can put in a define, what's known as a define, in your WP config file, and it will run some of Jetpack's features. And the reason that Jetpack doesn't, all the features don't work, is because there's a communication back and forth between the site and WordPress.com's Jetpack API, and it can't get past the firewall. So there's nothing, the same thing happens with Google's API for maps. So if you're building a site locally and you want to put in a Google map, you're going to probably have to test that part of it up online, because you won't be able to get past the firewall on that. Same thing with Jetpack.
Yeah. KFC, I don't know if this is true or not anymore. A lot of web hosts, they are running 5.x. One of the reasons that we took a while before we put out a release with 7.0, there were some challenges involved, as I wrote about. But the other thing is that we always have to consider what the majority of the web hosts are running out there, because we want the workflow for our users to be as smooth as possible. And the reality is that most web hosts are still running 5.x, but they have the ability from within the configuration panel or cPanel to upgrade to PHP 7. And I don't know if Media Temple has that ability or not in their configuration panel, but it might be possible that you can just with a click of a button from within that upgrade to 7.0 or 7 point something on Media Temple.
We would recommend reaching out to Media Temple support and see if they'll do that for you, or they'll help you on how to do that. End of life is for 5.6, for example, is December. There's no more. There'll be zero support after that. So we do suspect that after December, most hosts will be on 7.
Right. Yeah, that is true. And I've talked to several hosts that are saying that they're going to be making it default soon. So
And
I imagine.
it's scary. There are some, you and I both, Mark, have run across hosts that are still running as low as 5.2.
I know.
Which, if you as a client are on a host that has 5.2, you need to do something quickly, because that is an open gateway to hacking. 5.2 is literally an open door.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Kathy, in answer to your question, Kathy says, so am I correct in presuming these developer plugins are not active unless we click on them before going to our site? No, that is actually not correct. If you have enabled them at the startup of Desktop Server, it enables them on all of your local WordPress websites.
correct.
So the whole idea is that you don't have to do any installation, you don't have to do any deinstallation. They're just there. If you don't want them active, you have to deactivate it at the startup of Desktop Server.
Yeah, it remembers what you've checked. So if those are
correct,
if you checked on just 2 of them, the next time you start up Desktop Server, those 2 will be active.
Okay, so Sapience is I want to get this kind of clarified for you, Sapience. So I'm reading your question right now again, and I have a site that is very out of date, WP version, thesis version, plugin versions, and a PHP version. My server has been upgraded to 7.0 for my newer site, but I'm still using 5.4 on site I need SP. So and I think what Greg suggested was taking an archive of that site. You can use a free plugin like, um, well, what can we use now, Greg, for importing?
WP Backup.
Oh, WP Backup. Yeah. So you can use a plugin like WP Backup, and create an archive. And then in Desktop Server Premium, it has the ability to import these archives. And that's one way that you can start by testing on 7.0 and testing locally to make sure everything works, and then going through and making sure that each plugin and each theme works the way that it's supposed to under 7.0. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, I'm going to keep scrolling down through all these questions, and we'll try to get you taken care of one way or the other. If we do have to take it offline to kind of walk you through it, we're happy to do that too.
Yeah, I'd be happy to give him a hand on that.
Okay.
Because I've done it a couple times now.
Right. So Williams asked if the age-old question, this always, can I ask if Desktop Server 4.0 will come out at some point, or you continue to progressive enhancements? Don't care anyway. It works for me as it is. In answer to your question, Williams, no, you cannot ask, and I'm just kidding. Yes, you can ask. We are continuing to do the progressive work. Just we tried to introduce 4.0 a couple years ago, and we had an actual working version of the Mac, but because Windows was a little bit behind the times and a lot of things, we were running into a lot of problems with creating a Windows version that worked with that worked the way that we had envisioned it. We were working on it, and then we stepped back, because sometimes you get so deep into like what you're doing that sometimes you need to step back and say, wait, are we really approaching this the right way? And what we had to look at the time was, we had about 40,000 installations of Desktop Server. And we thought, now if we put out 4.0, and it's going to have a new interface, a new architecture, and new kind of everything, what's that going to do to our customer base who relies so heavily on this for their workflow? And we realized that it was going to create kind of some headaches, because they'd have to go through a learning curve with the new release of 4.0. And we thought, and when I say we thought, Steve is the one who suggested this, because Steve is a genius. And he said, why don't we take some of the functionality of Desktop Server 3.x and just pull it out and make it kind of forward compatible to 4.0. And we thought, well, that's much better. We will evolve into 4.0 rather than just putting out a 4.0 and changing everything. And so that's what we've been doing. So all of these design time plugins and all this added functionality, that's all part of 4.0. And the reality is that under the hood of Desktop Server 3.9.1, a lot of that is actually 4.0 code. It's just that the shell, the outside shell, and a couple small pieces within Desktop Server 3.9.1 are still 3.x code, but we are actually almost there at 4.0. So in answer to your question, we are getting there, but we're continuing down the progressive route, which is taking some time, but it's allowing us to introduce more functionality to Desktop Server in a better way without disrupting your workflow, which is something we're always very, very aware of, or try to be aware of. Is, this is about having an efficient workflow and spending less time with creating your development environment and more time actually doing the things that make you money. So that's and I hope that answers your question. And then Sapiens asks again, simply trying to learn whether SP is what will work best to bring that site up to date. But you just said ServerPress only works with PHP 7. That's correct.
But it's still a sandbox.
Right,
So
and it
that's
will.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it will still bring in your site that was built on 5.4 or whatever you said that it was built on, because the PHP is just an interpreter. So the site that you bring down, PHP 7 is still backwards compatible, and it's still going to interpret that PHP code. You might get a warning, and this is a good example of when you might want to run the debug and trace, because you can see if there's deprecated code and things like that in there.
Right.
And so it's not that the site won't work, it's that you might see where your site is flawed because it might be using older code or something that's not that's being deprecated. So it's not bringing down the PHP version is just the version that your server is running. It's the interpreter that your server is running, but the PHP files are still written in PHP, and a lot more and more plugin and theme developers are writing for PHP 7. So that's all we meant by that, and I hope that clears it up. I know it can get a little bit confusing, but like I said, we're happy to help you with it so that you can understand it. We do understand that sometimes this stuff gets a little complicated. Peter asks what Dreamweaver support does.
Dreamweaver support creates a dreamweaver.ste file, and that is it's a starter project file. So when you go into Dreamweaver, you can actually say start new projects and do a search, a find for that new Dreamweaver STE file that's in the new site, select it, and that'll populate everything into Dreamweaver.
Judith, in answer to your question, we are very, Judith asks, she says she moved server from an old computer to a new one. Does she need to repurchase for second computer? And the answer is no, you do not.
No.
We're actually pretty generous with our license. You can install it on a few machines. It doesn't matter. It is just one point of contact, though, for support. So even if you work with 3 or 4 people, we still just need the one point of contact, and we're happy to help you out with everything. So I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Various says, love the new office hours. Thanks, Various. How you doing?
Hey, Various.
Let's see. And I think I just scrolled too far. Douglas asks when ngrok is going to be available. Douglas, ngrok is a premium-only plugin, and it's available right now. It's actually included with the current release of Desktop Server.
Yep. Upgrade.
Upgrade, yeah. I think that I might have scrolled down too far. I want to see if I'm missing a question for the panel. How can I buy Dave a cup of coffee to say thanks for the database backup plugin? Jerry, you know the way to Dave's heart. We do not pay him anything but in coffee. So, in answer to your question, if you would like to send him some coffee, I'm sure you could buy him a Starbucks gift card or something like that, and he would absolutely love it. Yeah, he loves his coffee. There's no doubt about it. And half the time when we have our daily production meetings, we talk to him before coffee. And you guys don't want to see Dave before coffee. I'm just saying. So, search team SEO. Yes, this podcast is theoretically being recorded. It should show up live very shortly after we're done here. Let's see. Okay. And now let's see. I am scrolling down, looking at questions. So. Any performance hit if I enable all design time plugins?
I haven't noticed any.
I haven't either. I've never run into any issues with that. So it might take a little. The only performance hit I would say is the more design time plugins that you select to activate at the beginning, the longer it takes for Desktop Server to start the database and web services. But that's to be expected just because it's loading up all those plugins. But I've not once you've gotten to the main menu of Desktop Server, I've noticed absolutely zero performance hit. And that's one of the reasons that we've architected Desktop Server the way that we have is to make it as light on resources as possible once it's all loaded into memory. So Um, yeah, and Sapiens, there is that PHP compatibility checker that's available.
Oh
I
yeah.
I think that that's actually provided by WP Engine,
Hmm. And you get it right. I
and
think you can get it right off the
yeah,
repository.
and you can get it off the repository. Uh, I'm trying to remember if there were any caveats with that, but I can't off the top of my head. I seem to remember that somebody said yes, but so there was like a small caveat, but it wasn't anything that was a showstopper. So, uh, can I just say that major updates to localhost are a pain in the rear end for us? Steve Cunningham says, I quit making because of upgrades. Um, Yeah, I'm kind of curious what you mean by that, Steve. Major updates to local hosts. If you're referring to when we had, I think I might have interacted with you a little bit, Steve, when this happened. When Google kind of took over the .dev for their own and made it so that Chrome, if you did anything .dev, it would automatically go out to the internet. We had to switch so that the extension would be a .dev.cc. And yeah, Steve, if that's what you're referring to, because I think if I recall right, you were the one who had like a bajillion sites that you needed to fix. And when we had to deal with this, we had written a script, but it wasn't something that was automated until the next release of Desktop Server, which then did do an automatic conversion of .dev to .devcc. I will say that in that particular case, we shouldn't. I won't say never, but we shouldn't ever have to deal with something like that again. If I am speaking out of line and that is not what you're referring to, then go ahead and let me know and we'll talk about that. Um, let's see. Uh, how stable is our Beaver Builder support? Greg?
I'd like to say it's quite good. I but there's been some Beaver Builder just did a new release, or I think a new update just recently again. So I want to check that. And I know we're having some testing we're going to have some testing done next week on it, both Beaver Builder and the Divi extension for WP SiteSync. So I could answer that better next week.
Okay. And then Stefan asks a really good question. Will there be a better dev to live workflow or plugin? I haven't had a lot of success with that, just using Backup Buddy for now. And the answer, Stefan, is that yes, absolutely. We are working on a whole new deployment engine that will improve with very different hosts and hosts that have proprietary setups and different things for their security. So the answer is yes, we are working on a better workflow for our deployment. Barbara Wolf asks, what's the easiest way to check PHP without signing into host?
I could send her, I know Barbara really well. She can send me a request into support, and I can send her a little script, a PHP page that has something called PHP info with open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon. And if you were to upload that little script to your host and then visit that in the browser, it'll tell you all the information about that particular site.
And then any chance Elementor will be supported with WP SiteSync?
I'm pushing for it.
I knew that's what you were going to say. Yeah, yeah.
I'm voting for it. There's a little bit of a hold, Mark. I guess we could share this. There's a little hold on what other page builders we want to support because of the fact that Gutenberg's coming. So we're waiting to see, is Gutenberg going to sweep the market and make page builders not, I don't want to say that they won't be important any longer, but if Gutenberg explodes,
Less relevant.
yeah, it would sure make
Yeah.
them less relevant.
Yeah.
So, and we have to be careful because currently there's over, Various will tell you, he counted the last time he checked, there were over 65 page builders. So we have to decide which ones we want to support. Now, Elementor is a large one, and we do recognize that.
And I will say, I will vouch for Greg. When I read that question, I kind of laughed because whenever we talk about which page builder is next, Greg always says Elementor, Elementor, Elementor. So I kind of laughed when I saw the question. So so let's see. I think I have run out of questions. Did I answer everybody's questions? And when I say I meant did Greg answer everybody's questions? And KFC asks if Gutenberg will be able to keep up with Elementor, and I guess that's one of those remains to be
We
seen
will,
things.
yes, we'll
Yeah,
see. We'll
yeah.
see. That's the question.
I'm pretty sure that was a rhetorical question, but I
Yeah.
was anyway. Yeah.
Currently, no. I mean, clearly, we've looked at Gutenberg closely, and it's nowhere near as clean and polished as Elementor is. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions? I had set us to go from 12 to 1, but I was perfectly open to going till 1:30 or 2. And we're at about the 1:20 mark. So if anybody has any questions or anything. Oh, okay. What about WP Bakery Page Builder?
No, I don't see us supporting that, even though it is quite popular because it's in so many themes. I don't. I currently do not see us supporting it. It has so many issues in it that for us to write code to be able to work with it would be difficult.
Yeah. Douglas, in answer to your question about ngrok, it's not available. It is a premium only plugin, and anything that's a premium plugin only is in our private repositories. ngrok actually does require WP CLI to be built in, and so as a result, it is a premium plugin, and it is included in the premium installer. Okay. Stefan, yes, the replay will be available because nobody said anything offensive yet. So I think we can. I think we can make the replay available. Peter, in answer to your question, WP SiteSync support for Beaver Builder. What's the latest on that, Greg?
What was the question?
The WP SiteSync support for Beaver Builder.
It does support. We have an extension for Beaver Builder.
It's not officially out yet, but it is in beta and it's very, very close to release, right? We just have some final testing to do. And you can download the beta. You can download the beta right now, can't you?
I think if you send us something, we'll reply and provide you with the beta.
Yeah. Judith, no, you do not need to repurchase ServerPress for your new computer. You can use it on multiple machines at once. We just ask for a single point of contact. And of course the annual fee gets you all the updates and everything like that. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Yeah, Michael, I know that there are several people who are running WP Bakery, but as Greg said, there's a lot of complications with trying to make the plugin for WP Bakery work the way that it should. So it is something that we've talked about, but I will be honest, I don't think that it's something that that we'll be developing anytime soon. All right. Any other questions? Man, you guys were really interactive. This is great. Is WP SiteSync support for Divi ready? Jeff asks. Hi,
yes,
Jeff.
I believe it is. I think it is still in beta, but Jeff just sent me an email. I'd be happy to send you the current version to try and make sure that it does everything you expect it to do.
And Steve says, thanks, Greg and Mark. Nice first cast. Well, I think that other than the technical glitches, which we will try to get worked out by next week, I thought it went pretty well. And really appreciate you guys showing up. I will be honest when I say um, that the big concern Greg and I had is what happens if no one shows up. So thank goodness. Jeff, if you send an email to support@serverpress.com, that and just let us know that you heard us on the podcast and that you were interested in the Divi WP SiteSync extension, we'll take care of you.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, and also, yeah, I appreciate everybody's patience with us on this. I think I might have said that like a million times, but I really do. So, okay. And so I think with that, I'm going to give it about 10 more seconds for any more questions. So get it in, or
We're
we're going to
calling
call
it
this
an
a wrap.
end. Yeah.
We're going to call it an end if I can figure out how to end the podcast.
There's that.
There's always that. Yeah. All right. Hang on here. It's got to be in here in one of my browser windows here. Let's see here. Stop sharing. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye, all.
See you next week. If I can do this. I still haven't figured out how to get out of this. I just have too many windows open. I'm sure that's the story of everybody's life, right? Too many windows open. There. All right. And stop.